Hello and welcome to News Now on TV360. I am Deji Badimasi. The Nigerian government Wednesday disclosed that a total of 198 persons are now being monitored for the Ebola virus in the country. Before now, the Ebola virus case had been restricted to Lagos, but that has now changed. The government now says 21 persons are being monitored for the virus in the eastern state of Enugu. 177 are under surveillance for the virus in Lagos. Out of that number, 8 persons with confirmed cases are quarantined in an isolation ward at the Lagos Mainland Hospital. Minister of Information Labaran Mako made this known while briefing State House correspondents of the outcome of the weekly Federal Executive Council meeting presided over by President Goodluck Jonathan. Mako said Enugu had come into the picture because one of the nurses that treated the American Liberian Patrick Sawyer, who brought the virus into the country, ignored medical advice and traveled to Enugu.
So far, the number of people that have been traced is 198. Now, out of this number, 177 are in Lagos, and they are being traced. Some are in quarantine, some are being monitored by health specialists. Their movements, being monitored, and they are under directive from the Ministry of Health. So those in quarantine, and this number includes, people so far that have made contact with the index case or secondary contacts. So 198 of them, 177 in Lagos, and 21 persons in Enugu are also being watched. And this is because one of the nurses that was involved in the treatment of the index case, unfortunately, disobeyed medical instructions and somehow traveled to Enugu. But we have no problem. All those who she has been in contact with, including her husband, are under quarantine. And so the medical team has been able to trace all those who made contact with her. So the point I want to make here is that apart from those people who were in contact with the index case, Mr. Sawyer, the late Mr. Sawyer, and the secondary contacts with those who handled this case, there has not been any known person in Nigeria that had the probability of contracting this virus.
Now, the number of deaths from the deadly Ebola virus in Nigeria has now risen to 3. The latest victim is a protocol assistant with the ECOWAS Commission Liaison Office in Lagos, Jatu Asihu Abdul Kodia. The commission in a statement confirmed that Abdul Kodia was one of those that assisted the Liberian-American Patrick Sawyer when he collapsed on arrival at the Lagos airport from Monrovia, July 20th. Mr. Jatu had actually gone to the airport to receive Sawyer, who died of the virus days after he arrived in Nigeria. Sawyer had been infected with the virus in his home country of Liberia and was warned not to travel, but did so despite the warning and without clearance from authorities there. In the statement issued Tuesday night, the commission said Abdul Kodia has been in quarantine since it was revealed Sawyer died of the Ebola virus. Last week, the commission announced the temporary closure of its Lagos office to allow for decontamination of the premises as the vehicle in which Sawyer was conveyed to the hospital was packed within the premises for several days. The ECOWAS staff, including the driver who had also assisted him, had returned to the office and interacted with others, the commission said in the statement. Now, less than 24 hours after the World Health Organization approved the use of experimental drugs to treat the Ebola virus, Nigeria's National Health Research Ethics Committee says it has also approved the use of such untested drugs on Ebola patients here in Nigeria. In a statement issued in Abuja, the committee chairman, Professor Clement Adebamowo, confirmed the endorsement, stating that it is now ethical to use this treatment in the current situation without first submitting an application to National, State or Institutional Health Research Ethics Committee for prior review and approval. The committee, which comprises research scientists, is a national body under the Federal Ministry of Health. There's no cure for Ebola, and the outbreak has been declared a global health emergency by the World Health Organization. More than 1,000 persons have died from the latest Ebola outbreak, with countries like Guinea, Liberia, Sierra Leone and Nigeria affected. In addition, the committee waived the current requirement that international shipment of any biological samples out of Nigeria should be preceded by the establishment of a materials transfer agreement. According to Adebamawo, the waiver is to promote rapid international response to Ebola, which has become a global emergency. A team of virologists today visited the Lagos State University Teaching Hospital, LUTH, to train the medical personnel there on the hazards associated with the Ebola virus disease and how it can effectively be tackled in Nigeria. The session, which lasted for hours, exposed the audience, among other things, to the different species of the Ebola virus disease and how it can be promptly detected and properly managed to avoid further spread. Part of the reason for the visit of the medical team, sponsored by the World Health Organization, to LUTH was also to help install a medical equipment which could aid the speedy diagnosis of Ebola in Nigeria.
We have examined the machine that we set up. We've looked at the run, and the run is perfect. So from there we can take over. And we can now assure the whole country that with this facility now in place, we can promptly diagnose Ebola virus. So it's no more of presumptive any longer. This is specific using real-time facilities.
Now, we also spoke to Professor Stephanie Gunter, who is part of the foreign team to LUTH. He said there was no need for the panic in the country, as the government had already taken the primary steps towards containing the Ebola virus.
Nigeria, I think, has already established isolation centers for these patients. This is important. They have established diagnostics, or in the process of upgrading and improving the diagnostics for this. So this is most important. Public awareness, of course, to inform the public how patients who had contacts, how the contacts have to behave, that they interact with the public health authorities, that they go to the doctors when they know that they had contact to cases. So this is most important. I wouldn't say that you have the virus here in Lagos. So you have contacts isolated who had been infected by the index case, but there, as far as I know, there's no evidence that you have the virus here in Lagos and the virus is spreading. So it seems to me the situation is well under control. So at the moment, I think the most important thing is that you get all the contacts to the first index case, get them under control and isolated if needed, and be prepared in case that the virus perhaps is spreading in the country.
Following the recent approval of experimental drugs to treat the Ebola virus, Canada says it will donate up to 1,000 doses of an experimental Ebola vaccine to help battle the disease outbreak in West Africa. The Canadian Public Health Agency, in a statement, made the announcement stating that WHO's Director General, Margaret Chan, has approved of the donation. Canada also added that the experimental Ebola virus vaccine, which is made in Canada, has never been tested on humans but has shown to be effective in the treatment of the disease in animals. The country has only 1,500 of the experimental vaccine, but it says it will donate between 800 and 1,000 doses to the World Health Organization for use in West Africa, while keeping a small portion of the vaccine for research. The news comes hours after the World Health Organization said a panel of experts advised that it would be ethical to use untested drugs and vaccines in this raging epidemic, which is several times larger than any previous outbreak. The Nigerian government has debunked reports that some Indian doctors had claimed they were being forced to attend to Ebola patients at a private hospital in Abuja. Minister of Information Labaran Mako, who addressed newsmen in Abuja, said the reports about the doctors' claim were false. He also said that the reports were misleading and had the ability to cause undue panic among members of the public. Now, some newspapers in the country had quoted an Indian-based online newspapers reporting that about 4 Indian Nigerian doctors were prevented from resigning their employment with an Abuja-based hospital and leaving the country because they refused to treat Ebola patients. At the moment, there's no outbreak of Ebola or an Ebola patient in Abuja, so the news came as a surprise. The minister criticized the nature of the report as being unsubstantiated and asked the media to act responsibly in disseminating information. The Sultan of Sokoto, Alhaji Saad Abubakar III, has sent a warning to Muslims against the consumption of monkeys and bushmeat to avoid contracting the dreaded Ebola virus. In a statement on behalf of the Sultan by the JNI's Secretary General, Dr. Khalid Abubakar, Alhaji Abubakar noted that since it was first confirmed medically that Ebola was discovered in monkeys and fruit bats, it would be reasonable for Muslims to steer clear of such delicacies. The Sultan urged Muslims to abide by health tips and guidelines for the prevention of the disease and seriously advised that the culture of personal hygiene as well as proper sanitation must always be emphasized. Now, Kenya may be Ebola-free for now, but the World Health Organization has classified the East African nation as a high-risk country for the spread of the deadly virus. Kenya is considered vulnerable because it is a major transport hub with many flights from West Africa, a WHO official said. This is the most serious warning to date by the WHO that Ebola could spread to East Africa. Ebola was first reported in Guinea in February before spreading to Sierra Leone, Liberia, and now Nigeria. The WHO's country director for Kenya, Custodia Madihate, said the East African state was classified in Group 2 at high risk of transmission. Health checks at the main airport in the capital, Nairobi, have been stepped up in recent weeks. Germany says it has issued a red alert warning its citizens currently in countries being affected by the Ebola virus. A German foreign ministry spokesman said it urged its nationals to leave West African countries like Liberia, Guinea and Sierra Leone due to concerns over the virus. The request did not apply to medical workers. The German diplomatic staff and embassies will remain open, he added. The Ebola outbreak is the world's largest and deadliest, and the World Health Organization last week declared it an international health emergency. So far, more than 1,000 persons have died, the vast majority in Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone. Now, the U.S. Department of State has said no Ebola-related travel restrictions have been issued by the agency for Nigeria, Guinea, and Sierra Leone. The fact sheet issued by the State Department on its response to Ebola virus said the agency only issued a travel warning on August 7, 2014 against non-essential travel to Liberia. Due to a lack of opinions for routine health care services, the Department of State ordered the departure of family members residing with embassy staff in Monrovia to begin August 8, 2014. He said U.S. government employees in Liberia would remain on active duty at the embassy, and additional staff members are being deployed to assist Liberia in addressing the Ebola outbreak. The State Department, however, said the U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, issued alerts for the 4 West African countries affected by Ebola. The countries include Liberia, Guinea, Sierra Leone, and Nigeria. On Nigeria, CDC had issued a level 2 alert. The alert notifies travelers of the Ebola outbreak in Nigeria and to inform them of measures they can take to minimize risk of contracting the disease. According to the State Department, U.S. embassies in Guinea, Liberia, Nigeria, and Sierra Leone will remain open and will continue to do business as usual. To politics now, the Deputy Governor of Enugu State, Sunday Onyebuchi, Wednesday morning collapsed while testifying before the 7-man member panel investigating the allegation of gross misconduct against him. Onyebuchi is facing impeachment for operating a poultry farm in his official residence. His collapse brought the panel session to a halt as he was immediately taken to the hospital for medical attention. It is not certain what led to Onyebuchi's collapse. One of the defense counsel, Peter Eze, said the deputy governor collapsed few minutes after the State Attorney General Anthony Ani, in company of the Chief of Staff to the Governor, Mrs. Nwobodo, and other state government officials came into the court. Quite bizarre there, I should say. Now, for days, controversy has been raging at the National Conference in Abuja over a purported draft constitution which has seriously split delegates. But chairman of the National Conference, Justice Idris Kutigi, has now laid the matter to rest, saying that claims of a draft constitution waiting to be adopted by the plenary session of the conference is not true. He said there's nothing like a draft constitution but proposed amendments to the 1999 constitution as amended. Kutigi made the clarification at the plenary session where he stated that what was contained in the reports that were circulated to delegates of the conference were amendments to the 1999 constitution. Now, this comes as the Northern Delegates Forum, in a letter to the leadership of the conference signed by former Inspector General of Police and Chairman of the Arewa Consultative Forum, Ibrahim Komesi, and former Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Lieutenant General Jeremiah Oseni, threatened not to sign the final copy of the report. Spokesperson of the State Department of State Services, Marilyn Oga, has alleged that a certain political party offered it money during the just concluded governorship election in Osun State. Oga disclosed this at a routine briefing at the National Briefing Center in Abuja. She said the DSS is being hunted because it declined the 14 million naira it was offered as bribe. She said attempting to bribe DSS officials is a waste of time, as the service comprises professionals who are well paid and therefore have no reason whatsoever to compromise their values. She, however, refused to give the name of the political party that offered the bribe.
If security forces were not there, the story about Osun would have changed. Now, if security forces go out to do that the Nigerian citizens' tax money has been paid for them to do, I wonder why. I said it earlier today that God is a Nigerian. If God was not a Nigerian to give us the president that he gave to us, in the past, people will not be making some of these allegations that they are making. We should not abuse people's goodness. Right from last week, we have warned that political parties should, as much as possible, leave security forces out of politics. We are non-partisan and we want to remain like that. We are to provide an enabling environment, secure environment with which people will cast their votes, and that is what we have done. And the people who have won have won. We have also assisted to ensure that we maintain a secure environment.
Marilyn Oga, spokesperson of the Department of State Services, they are otherwise known as SSS. Now, INEC has scheduled the Adamawa State governorship by-election for October 11, but what is actually generating the buzz in that state is the alleged plan by the former chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, Nuhu Ribadu, to contest the election on the platform of the People's Democratic Party. Ribadu is at present a member of the opposition All Progressives Congress and was the party's presidential candidate in the 2011 presidential election, while it was then known as Action Congress of Nigeria. But there are reports now that Ribadu is set to dump the APC for the ruling PDP. The switch in party is reported to enable the former EFCC boss to secure the PDP governorship ticket and contest the election. Sources say the move has the backing actually of President Goodluck Jonathan, and that necessary steps had been put in place to enable Ribadu actualize his ambition of ruling the state under the PDP platform. Well, quite surprising there. Coordinator of the National Briefing Center on the insurgency in the northeast of the country, Michael Mary, says the Emir of Goza is alive and well, contrary to reports that he had been killed by Islamist sect Boko Haram. Boko Haram overran Goza in Borno State recently, burning the palace of the Emir and taking over the town. There were fears that the Emir, whose father was killed by Boko Haram, may have been killed in the attack, but Omeri told newsmen that the Emir managed to escape unhurt.
We wish to inform you that the Emir of Goza, Alhaji Mohammed Idrissa Timta, who was reported to have been declared missing last weekend when members of Boko Haram invaded his domain, is alive and not missing as was reported by the media. Our security forces are sufficiently armed and committed to not only flushing out members of Boko Haram, but working assiduously to ensure a guaranteed, peaceful and desired atmosphere required for development. Therefore, setting a deadline for an end to insurgency in the country is not akin to the same thing with the war being prosecuted by our military that is desirous to end the fight as quickly as possible.
Now, an Iranian-born mathematician has become the first woman to win the prestigious Fields Medal, widely viewed as the Nobel Prize of Mathematics. Maryam Mirzakhani, a Harvard-educated mathematician and professor at Stanford University in California, was one of 4 winners announced by the International Congress of Mathematics, ICM, at its conference in Seoul on Wednesday. The award recognized Mirzakhani's sophisticated and highly original contributions to the fields of geometry and dynamical systems, particularly in understanding the symmetry of curved surfaces such as spheres. Although her work is considered pure mathematics and is mostly theoretical, it has implications for physics and quantum field theory, as well as for the study of prime numbers and cryptography, I should say. Mirzakhani was born in Tehran in 1977 and earned her PhD in 2004 from Harvard University. She has actually previously won the 2009 Blumenthal Award for the Advancement of Research in Pure Mathematics and the 2013 Sutter Prize of the American Mathematical Society. The Fields Medal is given out every 4 years, often to multiple winners who should not be aged over 40. The other 3 winners this year were Arthur Avila of France, Manjol Bagava of Princeton University in New Jersey, and Martin Hira of the University of Warwick in Britain. With no Nobel Prize awarded for mathematics, the Fields Medal is seen as a top global award for the discipline. The medals were presented by South Korea's first woman president, Park Geun-hye. The Minister of Sports, Tamuno Donagogo, has opposed the decision of the Electoral Committee of the Nigerian Football Federation, NFF, to disqualify some candidates from the August 26 election to elect a new president for the body. Donagogo, who is also the chairman of the National Sports Commission, NSC, stated this while addressing journalists in Abuja. Earlier Wednesday, the Electoral Committee of the Nigerian Football Federation said it had disqualified 3 major aspirants for the office of the president of the federation. Those disqualified include ex-Nigerian international and 1980 Nations Cup winner Segun Odegbami, former scribe of the NFF Taiwo Ogunjobi, and current acting chairman of the federation Victor Omer. The panel cleared club owner Chris Giwa for president of the NFF. Donagogo has, however, condemned the process, saying it is not acceptable. Now, the Confederation of African Football has ordered the federations of Guinea, Liberia and Sierra Leone to relocate their home matches to neutral venues following the spread of the Ebola virus in their countries. Their opponents recently complained to CAF to move the matches away from those countries due to the threat of the deadly disease, which has devastated regions of West Africa in recent weeks. CAF has now ordered fixtures in those countries to be relocated due to the threat of highly infectious virus spreading further. A statement released on the official website read, CAF maintains all fixtures on the continent except Guinea, Sierra Leone and Liberia, where the Ebola disease has registered a high record of infection. Now, the organization aid the ban will remain in force until September and will be reviewed in accordance with the health situation in those countries. The Ebola virus has infected close to 2,000 people in the 3 countries, causing 373 deaths in Guinea, 323 in Liberia, and 315 in Sierra Leone. There's no definite cure, according to the WHO, although untested treatment methods have recently been approved effective in 2 cases affecting Americans. Well, on that note, we end news now. We thank you very much for watching. I am Deji Badimasi. We'll see you again tomorrow.